Hey everyone, welcome back. So nice to have you join me again. Um, I was just thinking today, and I wanted to share a little bit, and I know it's going to get a little bit nostalgic and thinking back, but how it started is we're in October now, and we just celebrated, my wife and I, our anniversary on the 6th of October. We've been married now for 19 years, and it feels like a lifetime ago. And over and above the 19 years that we've actually been married, it's we've known each other since school, so that's just the time that we've been married. We met each other when we were like 12 or 13 years old, and it just got me thinking back on my life and where we are and how we've got here and where we're going. So I know, really, it's one of those where I just really wanted to share a little bit more. It really got me thinking. We've been here in New Zealand now for just over 2.5 years. We're heading up towards our 3 year. We've got our permanent residency. Things are going well. So I'm really grateful for everything that we've got and what we've been able to do. But it does get you thinking, especially when with after my anniversary and thinking about what my wife and I have achieved in our lives so far together with the kids and the family and everything. And it got me thinking back and reminding me in 2006 when we got married and we were still young and we were in our early 20s and buying that first house together. I remember that feeling of with newlyweds, just been married, driving around from house to house, looking at show days, and it works differently. Also, that's what I'm also learning. I'm now in my 40s and considering buying a house here, but it's so different to the way it worked back in South Africa. Um, Back in South Africa, when we were in our early 20s, the way you would buy a house is every Sunday they would have show houses, and you would drive around to those different show houses and go schmouse and look around and try to see which house you like. And I remember us driving around, and I think it was the first house that we went to go see, and it was in this small estate or complex. So security is a big thing in South Africa. So we really needed to make sure that we'd find a place that's in a state with security. So that was big for us. But a lot of those estates, the homes are very expensive. So we had to find something that was more affordable. So what we were able to do is find a complex with smaller units. So there were 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units in them. So it was smaller places and a little bit more in our price bracket. And I remember going to see this first property, and it was freestanding as well. So it wasn't adjoining another property, which was awesome. It meant it had its own garden. When you just walk into a home or a house and it feels like a home, you start imagining where you can put everything and how you would be able to make this your own. And it just gets you, I even got goosebumps just thinking about it now. And it really just makes you so excited to think, geez, this could be a reality. This could be mine. I can picture us here. And that's how that first home felt. And I know we looked at it, and it was the first one we seen. We said, I can't buy the first house we've seen. We need to drive around and at least look at a couple of others. And all it ended up doing is I remember Amy and I driving around to several other homes that day, and every single one you compare to that first home because it was just perfect. And that's when we turned to each other and we said, we're looking at all these others, we're comparing it to the first home. We know that is the one for us. We know it just ticked all the boxes. It just felt right. When you've got that feeling and that excitement and you've built up the picture and you just want it. It's like, this can be home for us. So we turned around, went back, and we put in an offer. And I remember this was a new experience for us. We've never bought a house before. And just thinking, okay, well, let's see where it leads. And we're taking a bit of a chance. And I remember putting in an offer, and I remember the agent actually phoning us back and telling us, no, that the owners accepted our offer. And that was like, geez, this is becoming real. We're really going to be able to own our first home together. And I remember moving it along once we finally got all the bonds and everything approved. And we actually did move into that home for the first time. There was a whole lot of things we still had to do. It wasn't perfect. Well, I mean, it was a good starter home for us, a good 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom with a loft and everything. It had a perfect garden. Well, it had a garden. It wasn't the perfect garden. It still needed a bit of work. It had a patio, but it needed a lot of work. But we could see this was our dream of how we could build this out and make it our own. So we were so excited about that. And I remember moving in, and in the very beginning, we didn't have a lot of furniture and everything like that. So I remember we even had camper chairs sitting in the lounge, watching TV, and the TV was on the floor. It wasn't even sitting on a wall unit or a TV unit. And I remember when you would talk on the phone or anything like that, it would echo because we didn't even have proper curtains and we didn't have enough furniture in the house. So even though it was a small home, but that was your first home, it was yours and you could slowly build it up. And I know how Amy and I slowly built up and got all the furniture and actually started building a home for ourselves. And then we started doing renovations and we had dreams of what we wanted to do with the home. And one of the big things for us is we really wanted to have family around us and coming together on Christmases and birthdays. And in South Africa, it was a big thing, inviting people around to your home and having braais or barbecues, and having people and your family around you. But we now had a place that we could do that, but we needed to make it comfortable to be able to do that. So besides the furniture we had to buy, big thing for me was getting a patio suite. So it was such an exciting moment when I was able to buy a patio seat so I could actually have my family around a table and we could have a braai together and having you know, everybody eat together at my house. And it was such a proud moment. And I felt like I've made it. I'm doing it. We're doing this together and we're moving in the right direction. And I'm growing up and I can actually make this work. And I felt proud of myself, but it was also so nice when you could see my parents were proud of me and my family was proud of me. And Amy and I were so proud of each other for what we've been able to achieve. So that feeling was so awesome, owning that first home. And I remember even when we did the garden, we got a landscaper in and we did, it was important to us to make the garden look really nice and all for entertaining and everything like that. And I just remember how we were investing in that home, but it was ours and investing in and growing it. It was so awesome. It was such a good feeling to be able to buy that first home. In parallel with this, when we were still in our 20s, we were very blessed. We were doing well in our jobs in South Africa. We didn't rush into having kids. We were married for 6 years before we had our first child. We said it was important for us to build a home and build our careers a bit. And part of building our careers, one of the things I was trying to do is I was thinking ahead, thinking future, thinking, okay, how can we financially get ourselves in a position where we're doing well. We're very driven. So one of the things I did with a good friend of mine is we started up a business and started trying to buy investment properties. So I remember buying the first investment property with him and we went to go see, it was off build. And I went to go see these and it was apartment units. So it was 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, but in apartment blocks. And they were building them. And I went with Jay and we went to go see the first one. I think Amy even came along with us to see the very first one. And they told us the price and everything like that. And I was like, I'm nervous. I'm so nervous. We've just bought our own first home. And now, as much as Jay would be a partner in buying this first unit, I was nervous because are you extending yourself too much? Will you be able to get a rent, it rented out? Will you be able to get a tenant in and keep the tenant in? Or what if you can't? And then you got to pay for that. It was nerve-wracking trying to invest in property. And we were also young, so we were learning. And I remember going and looking at it and Jay was like, well, we got to do this. We're going to apply for the mortgages or the bonds or whatever else so we can actually buy this first investment property. And I remember the mortgage got approved by the banks. And what actually happened was we were trying with different banks at the same time to see who would give us the best rate. So we didn't just go to the one bank. And it ended up coming back that more than one bank approved our loans or pre-approved our loan. And Jay turned around to me and said, well, maybe we should just buy 2 units instead of 1. And I was like, geez, Jay, you're killing me here, bud. I'm so nervous just getting the first unit, let alone now going for 2 units. Maybe we're stretching ourselves too much. But he was that person behind me trying to push me. And I was that one that was risk averse and worried. But we ended up doing it. And not only that, at that stage, being so young, the banks were even offering 110% loans. And I'm not saying that was always the best idea, taking 110% loans, because you actually, and I'm not going to get into the financial side, you don't want 110%. You probably want a little bit, a good deposit in so that your tenant is actually covering a lot of whatever the monthly fee is for the mortgage, etc. But that's a different story on its own. But I just remember him pushing us so we'd be able to get 2 units. And we had our 2 units, first 2 units up and going. And then we had to get our lease agreements in place and starting to actually advertise and get tenants in. So it was very exciting because over and above building your own personal career, we had this side hustle going where we were trying to build a portfolio of properties as well. And now we actually had our first 2 over and above our first home. And then Jay was, oh man, he was determined. So even over I think a good 5-year period from there, he pushed us to get another 3. So at one stage, we had 5 smaller properties on our portfolio over and above my own private property. And we really just had the sense of, geez, the world was our oyster and we were owning this, man. We were heading towards 30. We were still young, but we're building our wealth. We're building our future. And that's when Amy and I started thinking about kids and said, okay, we're getting to a point where we've got a home. We're doing well in our careers. We're starting to build out our wealth. We're starting to make what we believe are good decisions for our future. We can go ahead and start a family. And I remember that's when we fell pregnant. We had my son, and that's when we started outgrowing our first home that we had bought together, because now we'd been married for 6 years, staying in that place for a bit. And we thought, no, well, now we need to consider buying a forever home and a bigger place. And at the same time as going through all of this with the investment properties and having our home and now having our first child and thinking about, although it was a 2-bedroom home, we're starting to outgrow it and thinking about expanding. We also had my mother-in-law at that stage starting to get older in age. So we wanted her to live with us, but now in a 2-bedroom home, that wasn't going to work. So she first moved in with us and we had the loft. It wasn't ideal the way that the house was set up. We really were outgrowing that home. And that's when we started thinking, what are we going to do? And the strangest thing, now that we had started investing in other property, our neighbor to our private home that we had in that complex, they were selling their home. And that's when Amy and I thought, geez, should we invest in that property together? So over and above the investments I had with Jay, and we have our own house, should we buy the house next door, but we buy it as an investment property and get your mom to move in there, and then she can be our neighbor, so we don't have to move out of our home right now, but your mom is right next door to us. And I thought, geez, I don't even know if we can afford this. Can we do this? Are we stretching ourselves too far? And anyway, long story short, we actually ended up putting in an offer on that house. It was also a 2-bedroom, pretty much a mirror of what ours was, just without the loft. But it was right next door to us. And we bought that property, and my mother-in-law actually moved out into that property, and she stayed there in that unit. I don't think it was a mirror. It was actually a little bit bigger. I think it was a 3-bedroom, if I remember correctly. Yeah, a 3-bedroom, and ours was a 2-bedroom. But anyway, my mother-in-law moved into that unit. So now we had an investment property between Amy and I, our own property, and I had the portfolio with Jay, and we just thought we were really owning it and doing so well. And I'm not trying to do this to brag. I'm just trying to give you context in my life and how we've built up over the years. And we always had this drive and this ambition to do well. It was so important to me that I needed to be able to be in a financially secure situation. I came from a background, and don't get me wrong, my parents were phenomenal. They really, I've had a great childhood, and not a perfect childhood, but a great childhood. But one of the things that was a challenge growing up was financial stability. Okay. Yes, we had a home, but there was times, when we didn't even have enough money to pay the bills and buy food and whatever else. So it was challenging for my parents. It really wasn't always smooth sailing. So I think that taught me that one of the things I really I didn't want that for my children. I wanted to make sure that I was financially secure and sound. And I think that's probably what was driving me so hard, with obviously Jay and my wife behind me, trying to build out what I thought was the right thing to build well, so that we would have a secure future for not only ourselves, but our children. So that was a big thing for me. So please, it's not to brag. It's just trying to give you context of where I've come from. So when we were building that out, so eventually I think we must have been close to 30 then, 30 years old. And we had our investment property between Amy and I. We had our own home. My son was, I don't know, he was a toddler now. So he must have been like 2 or 3 years old. My mother-in-law was staying next door, and we still had that drive and that push. And we thought, no, we need our forever home. This home is not big enough. If we wanted to have a second child, whatever, 2 bedrooms is not going to cut it. Okay. So then we started getting back on the market and looking for our forever home. And I remember us driving around, and where we stayed in Johannesburg, there was an area that we grew up in. It's where we went to school and everything like that. And it was like a dream area for me to be able to buy a home. And we drove around, and on the show days again, we saw this one home, and I remember it was a family that was moving from Johannesburg down to Cape Town. And I remember that The wife was a doctor, and the husband was in electronics, and they had 2 kids. And we saw this home, and it had the laminate flooring that we wanted. It had a small little granny flat cottage that my mother-in-law could stay in. It had a big garden. It had a swimming pool. It had everything that we would want. It was like ticking all the boxes. The bathrooms were beautiful. The kitchen wasn't perfect. There was obviously some things that we would have to change and renovate. But again, it was that feeling when you walked in and it just felt like home, and you started picturing what you could do in your future. And we're just thinking, this would be perfect. So again, we put in an offer, and I know it was even back and forth, and it was it was really stretching our budget. And we're trying to work out, okay, we'd have to sell our current home, which was our first home Amy and I bought together, and we'd have to sell the home that her mom is staying in, which was the investment home that we had. And hopefully, with a sale of both of those, we'd be able to put it down enough of a deposit to be able to move into this forever home. And because it had the cottage for my mother-in-law, it would be the perfect space for us. So I remember going through all this, and it was a bit nerve-wracking trying to get it all done, but we got through it, and we eventually bought that forever home, sold our other 2 properties, and now we had our forever home. And I remember inviting my family around, and now we had even more space to invite the more extended family to join us on Christmas days and birthdays, etc., and having all the kids jumping and swimming in the pool while the braai was going, and everybody sitting outside on the patio, and the kids running around on the grass. And it's such a proud moment. But it wasn't only a proud moment, it's just such a grateful moment, because I had that feeling of, I've got my family together. We've got a home where we can bring them all together. And it just felt right. It felt like we're heading in the right direction, and we felt so good. I felt so good. I felt so proud. And I just loved that I could have all my family together. I mean, I love that I can even almost smell when the barbecue is going or the braai is going, and you can smell that smell of the braai and all that smoke going around the patio, and you can hear the kids laughing and splashing in the pool and jumping in it. It's just, that was happiness to me. That's what we were here for. That's what we were living for. And I felt like we had finally made it, and we had got there. Now, why am I telling you all this? So that was my life, and that was our home. So that's why it was such a big decision for us when we had to decide we wanted to leave all of that, because of so many other reasons, and I've gone through it in my other podcasts, to leave South Africa and start here in New Zealand. Now, we did our pros and cons, and we weighed it out, and I still believe we've made the right decision because of the opportunities and the future that my children will now have, okay? But what it has left me with is we've moved here now, and we're almost here for 3 years, 2.5, going on 3 years. I miss having my own home. I miss being able to obviously have all my family around, but in having an own home, it's having that dream that this is your forever home. This is your piece of, in this case, New Zealand. This is where we will be able to grow old together. You feel secure that at least you've got a roof over your head that is yours. Here with renting, it's worrying, the landlord could, at the drop of a hat, decide they want to sell or they want to move back in, and it's happened to us. So you've always got that worry that you potentially would have to move. You also can't dream and say, in this house, I wish I could extend this or change this room or redo that bathroom. You won't, because it's not yours. So you can't have that dream. I mean, I've shared on another podcast, I've got that dream where I want to buy a home here. I want to be able to, I want that feeling of waking up in the morning, having that first cup of coffee, and I can picture it in my mind where we've got big windows looking over onto the deck, but with a view of the sea. And I know I'm dreaming here, but I really hope this dream can come true, where I'm watching the sunrise and I can feel the warmth of the sun while I'm busy smelling that coffee, drinking it first thing in the morning in my own home that I own. Now that's my dream. That's really what I want here. Okay. It's not what I have today. What I have today is rental, and don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for the home that we were able to rent here. I'm grateful for the life we were able to build here at the moment, and for this opportunity to be here. But I think a big fear that I have is that, will I ever be able to buy a home? Will I be able to get anything? And I'm not saying size-wise or whatever else, or as many, or like I had back in South Africa. You look at the pricing, it's totally different. It's like comparing apples and oranges. You look at the property costs in South Africa back then, and yeah, I know it was a few years ago and maybe things have gone up, and that's not what I'm trying to get into, but just to give you an idea, that home that I bought, that was my forever home with the granny flat for my mother-in-law to stay in, that was like, we bought it for 2.5 million rand, which is like $250,000. $250,000 will buy you maybe a one-bedroom place here if you're lucky, depending on where you're trying to buy it. Okay, for that, that's probably your deposit, or maybe you could get away with a bit less, but that's like your deposit. Houses here, a 3-bedroom, depending on where you're trying to look, the average is going to cost you like $700,000, which is like 7 million rand. 7 million rand back in South Africa will buy you a mansion, man. So it's scary when you think of the numbers like that, and you think what I had and what I would love to have here. There's sometimes when you will sit here and think, geez, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do this. Am I ever going to be able to buy my own little piece of New Zealand, our home, to plant our roots? And it's not just about the financial side, like what I was talking about in South Africa, building a portfolio, thinking long-term, thinking passive income, thinking retirement, all of that. And yes, I think that here, but it changed. I know I'm 43 now. I got here when I'm 40. I don't have as much time. I don't have the luxury of time like I did when I was young. I've also got family where I can't be I got to be a little bit more risk averse. You got to be careful here. I don't have hundreds and thousands and millions in the bank as a buffer. I've got to be careful with the decisions I make here. So it sometimes, I wouldn't say it keeps me up at night, but it does worry me. How am I ever going to be able to buy a home here? Am I ever going to be able to get our own place? And I did start doing a lot of thinking. If you've been following me, you'll know one of the things I'm always about is, okay, well, we've got a problem. How do we find a solution and put a plan together and move forward? How do we fix things? I know it can drive my wife nuts that I'm that type of person. I want to be a fixer, okay? And I don't have the answers for all of this yet, but I at least started working out, okay, get into the financial side of it, work out, well, what are the costs of places in the areas that you like here? So at least you've got an idea of how much you're in for here. Then it's starting to work out, well, what are your options, okay? How much can I afford to budget to save, invest, so that I could potentially have that deposit, so that I could buy a home? Also trying to work it out with how many years I've got left until I want to retire. And that's another question on its own, is never mind buying a home, but would I be able to have enough in the bank or enough invested to be able to retire and not be a burden on my family? These are the things that keep me up and make me worry that, yes, I've made the right decision. I believe in moving here. And yes, it's good opportunities for my kids and their future. But what about my wife and I? What about us buying our home? What about us being able to have our little piece of New Zealand that, we can call our own and eventually retire and live in? And also having enough money to be able to retire, so we're not a burden on our children. So those are the things that keep me up at night. And also looking at, like I mentioned, the prices of property here. And also, a lot of people will have explained, you'll hear on social media, and I've chatted about it on some of my recent podcasts and YouTube clips and everything that I've shared. The economy is tough here. It's expensive. The cost of living is not cheap. So being able to save is like, well, I'm just trying to survive and live here. Never mind trying to put money aside to be able to buy a home with a deposit, or be able to invest, or be able to put money aside for my retirement. That's hard. It's like, how do you do this? How do you make it all work on the salary that I've got? I mean, some people are even just worried about, how do I even just keep employed? Let alone worrying about this sort of stuff, Brett. That's like, I wish I was in the scenario you were in at the moment, where you've at least got a job, you've got a permanent income and all the rest of it. I would love that. And I get it. Everybody's at a different stage. But I'm at this stage now where I've been here for a little while, and now I'm really starting to think, okay, how do I make this a reality? How do I really put enough money aside to be able to get that deposit, to actually get that home, to make this dream come true, so I can make it a reality? But at the same time, also be able to save enough so that I'm not a burden on my children, and that we will be able to retire. And I've been crunching numbers and trying to put spreadsheets together and all different types of plans. And it's not easy. And I've got some ideas of what I want to do. But I wanted to share this with you today one, hopefully I'm not alone, and hopefully there's others out there that are in the same sort of scenario. Okay. And I know there's going to be a lot of you that are still at the beginning stage of, geez, Brett, we're just trying to settle in a job and just trying to survive and get to a point where you are now, where we can even think about a home and think about our future and retirement. I get that. Okay. Everybody's going to be at a different stage. There's going to be those that potentially are listening that have been here for years, and you've got that first home and you've actually made it happen. And that's where we're dreaming of getting to. But I'm at that stage now where I'm thinking, okay, how do I buy a home? How do I make sure I'm putting enough money aside so that I can retire and not be a burden on my children? That's the stage I'm at. And I'm hoping there's others out there that are at the same stage as me. Okay. And that's what I'm going to try focus on for the next couple of podcasts is I'm going to say, okay, let's work together in figuring out how we start putting a real plan together to make buying a home a reality. And not only buying a home a reality, but how do we also put a plan together on being able to make sure that we can retire and not be a burden on our children and actually make it work here. So that's what I'm going to put some effort in on the next couple of podcasts, is work that out. And the way I'm going to do that is I've approached a financial advisor who I'm going to interview, and she is going to help us with me as an example, working out that plan so you can learn from me. But if there's any of you out there that want to be involved, reach out. Go to my Linktree link in the description, click on it, go to the ask or reach out, give me your details, your email address and everything like that, and I'll get in contact with you. And let's try even create a group and we all do this together, because she'll meet with you guys too, no charge, just to go through your budgets and everything like that. And just like I'm going to do with you guys on the next couple of podcasts, where she's going to help me with putting my plan together, and I'll share that with you so you can learn from that plan on how to get ready to be able to buy a house and to be able to retire, so that you can learn from me. If you want to do the exact same thing, share your details so we can do it together. Because I genuinely believe a big thing for me, over and above that keeping me up at night, I'm hoping that is one of the things that's going to help me feel like this is home and that I can settle, is actually being able to buy my own home. I think that's going to almost feel like I'm planting roots, like it's real. I can stay here. I belong here. And that's what I'm trying to work towards. And I'm not saying I don't feel like I belong, but I'm still trying to get there. I'm still trying to settle. I'm still trying to work towards really making New Zealand feel like home. Yeah, I'm doing a lot right. And I'm feeling, I'm sharing a lot of that. I feel like we've done a lot, and I'm very grateful for a lot of what we have. A lot of other people that have immigrated don't have half of what we have. And I get that. But I haven't 100% settled yet and feel like, geez, this is home. There's nothing I miss at all from my past home in South Africa. So I believe this is one of the things I need to work on, is figuring out, how do I buy a home? How do I plant those roots for Amy and I and our family? So we've got our own roof over our own head, our own little piece of New Zealand. And I also need to tie that in with making sure that if you wanted to use your KiwiSaver for deposits, whatever else, that we're still going to make sure we have enough money to be able to retire and not be a burden on our family. So if that's the stage you're in, and you can relate to this, share it with others that you think may benefit from hearing this and coming along on the journey. Please reach out, share your details. I'd love to create a group where we all work together, keep each other accountable, so that we can meet with Ivandee from Migrant Financial Services, and not only put my plan together, but she can help you guys put your plan together so we can make this a reality. So yeah, that's really what was on my heart today and what I wanted to share. And I'm looking forward to some of the other interviews and other podcasts that I'm going to do to help us together achieve this dream of being able to buy a home and make sure we can retire and not be a burden on our families or our children. With that, you guys must keep safe, and we'll speak soon. Cheers. Follow and subscribe and help me spread the word and help as many immigrants as possible make New Zealand home.